We should be live. So,
Hi.
welcome everybody, whoever
Welcome.
is here. We're going to have an interesting live stream tonight because Tiffany and I both finished the book last night.
hmm
So,
You're getting our very fresh thoughts.
very,
It's a positive, it's not a negative.
yeah.
Love it.
But if it's a little scattered, you know why.
hmm
And the cat has come back.
Welcome back, Houdini.
Hello, Dia.
Hi, Dia.
We wait for other people to arrive. I will go ahead and introduce my co host. So, this is Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia.
Hi.
You've probably heard of her. At least I know Dia has.
I don't know if everyone that watches you has, but Dia has.
Dia definitely has. But if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, sure. So, as Charlene said, I'm Tiffany. My channel name is Beautiful Minutia. And I read kind of like a little bit of everything, but I would say that my most read genres are certainly classics and fantasy. But I don't read a ton of YA fantasy. So this is a little bit different than the fantasy that I normally read. So, yeah.
And Dia
Nice to
says,
meet you
hello,
too,
Tiffany.
Dia.
Nice to meet you.
Always a pleasure to meet you, Dia.
All right. So for the book club this month, we read The Book Jumper by Mechthild Gläser, which is always fun to say because it's a German name.
I wasn't
Uh,
sure if it was Glazer or Glesser, so I was like,
yeah,
what
Gläser.
does the umlaut mean in this situation?
Yeah. A umlaut in German is
Okay.
That one I do know.
Okay.
I took German for 2 semesters and I still struggle with the O and U umlauts. So,
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
yeah. Um, so, do you want to talk about what this book was about? Or do you want
Yeah,
me to do it?
sure. I think that it has like the best cover, first of all. I can't hold up the cover, so I'm glad Charlene can because I read it on Kindle. I got it from the library. So this book is essentially about a girl who goes to this island. Her and her mother kind of need a break from life because some things have happened. So they go to this island and she finds out that she is in a long line of book jumpers, people who are able to jump into the pages of a book and they're able to kind of protect the literary world through that. And that's kind of like the premise of the book. And I was talking to Dia about this last night, actually, that I thought it was interesting that there are some similarities between this story and Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. And it was interesting that they're both German authors and they're like similar kind of, and they're not exactly the same, not even close, but the idea of being able to jump into the pages of a book, I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Actually, I was noticing a lot of similarities between this and The Book Wanderers. I've only read the first book.
Oh, I haven't read that, so
Yeah.
Claire has, but I haven't.
Yeah. There's one thing in particular this book has in common with The Book Wanderers, but I don't want to say it is because I don't want to spoil The Book Wanderers either.
Okay.
So
It looks so cute. I've heard good things about it, but it's one of those ones that I've just not gotten around to. Story of my life, really.
right.
My TBR grows, but my time to read does not.
No.
It's not fair.
No. It would be nice if it did though.
Yeah, it really would.
So if we want to start with some general non-spoilery thoughts on the books, and then after that we'll get to the spoilery stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So I enjoyed this book. I thought it was a fun ride, but I felt like the ideas were really interesting and I liked them, but I felt like a lot of the characterization wasn't very in depth. I felt like a lot of them didn't have like I couldn't tell you much about our main character except that she was bullied and she likes books. Like I didn't, and then like the boy that she is friends with in the book, Will, I feel like he's like he's really smart and like Sherlock Holmes, and then he has stormy blue-gray eyes. That's all I can tell you about him. So I though I had a lot of fun with it, I didn't think it was like particularly deep or had characters that I would find very memorable.
Yeah, I would agree. There
So
were a lot of times that I was reading through the book and I'm like, I feel like we need more detail here.
yeah.
Like, you're giving us this information, but then you're not delving into it.
Yeah, and there were several times where I'm like, this seems like this doesn't make sense with the rules you've already given us about how this works. And then later someone would address it, like 50 pages later. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you addressed it, but
Right.
so it was a fun read, but I wouldn't have minded getting a bit more of things. I think it was like a 3 to 3.5 star for me, which is fun, but not life-changing or something I would probably reread.
Right. Yeah, Dia says not going to stick with you.
No, it won't.
Yeah.
Like I said, the ideas were cool, and there were some really like beautifully written like moments or things like sentiments about books, or beautifully written like moments where they're like on this island that is very Scottish, and so there are some moments that I'm like, oh, this is nice, but like overall, I found a decent amount of it to be predictable. There were some things I didn't see coming about the end, but a lot of things I saw early on. But the ideas were really fun. I felt like it would have made actually a really good middle grade book if they had scaled down a little bit of like the romantic content, and there was like a little bit of language in it. And I'm like, if they scale both those things back, this would have been a great middle grade.
Yeah. And I think that's why it reminded me of the book Wanderers, because that one is middle grade. And I'm like, this feels like Book Wanderers just made a little bit older.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
So real quick before I continue, Ashley is here. She says she hasn't quite finished it yet. So unfortunately, we will delve into spoilers in a little bit. Right now, we're not talking spoilers, though, so you're safe for now. And then Tia's here. Hello. Chrissy is here.
Hi, Chrissy.
So we got a few people tonight.
Yay. I've been really enjoying seeing people's comments on Fable. This is the first time I have ever done like a buddy read on Fable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is set up so great. Like, I love it. I want to do more group reads on Fable. So I'm really glad that you did that, because that like gave me a chance to kind of like check it out, because I hadn't.
Yeah. I looked through a few different places, and Fable seemed like the one that might work the best. So thankfully it does seem to be working. But
yeah, I really like it.
And Chrissy just finished it today, so she's not much ahead
Yay.
of us.
Good job. Good job, Chrissy. We did it. I finished it last night at about 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
At least it read really quickly. I didn't start it till Tuesday, and I'm like, this might have been a mistake, but I got through it just fine.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things plot-wise in the story will probably stick with me longer than the characters themselves, as you were talking about the characters.
Yeah. I did really love too. This is not spoilery since we're in the non-spoilery section. I loved the literary references. And Dia, I don't know if you read this along with us or not, but Momo is mentioned a whole bunch of times by Michael Ende. It's one of the main character's favorite books. And I'm like, I never hear anyone talk about this book. And I read it for middle grade March, I think last year, and I sent Dia a copy, and she read it this year. And so I'm like, yay, Momo representation. But I did also say this on Fable, they gave major spoilers, like that you would not know were coming from several literary works, that I was like, I'm kind of mad you did this. And then some like low-key spoilers from like The Little Prince and a couple other things, but they majorly spoiled Anna Karenina and is it Poor Young Werther or something, or just Young Werther? I can't remember.
I was like, I can't remember his book.
I Goethe, and I understand why she included that one now, knowing that she's German and stuff, that she would include Goethe. But I was just like, I haven't read that one yet, and it's on my shelves, and now I know the ends. Dang it, I was mad.
Which I did find it funny. There was one book that she mentioned, and it was mentioned late enough, I won't say which one, but there's one book that she mentioned that's by a German author, either German or Austrian, and Amy doesn't know what the story is. Like, she's racking her brain to remember, and I'm like, I feel like it's so iconic, especially if you're from Germany. I feel like you should know what it is. So
yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about, actually. Yeah, there's a couple of them that I'm like,
How do you not
What
know
do you
this
mean
book?
you don't know this? Or even like she this isn't spoilery either because they choose books for them to jump into to kind of train them that
Mhm.
are like safe. And she's like, "Well, here's the Jungle Book. I remember watching the movie." And I'm like, "You haven't even read it?"
Yeah,
Like it is very very different from the movie, and Mowgli's story is not even the only story in it. It's a collection of stories.
yeah.
And so I was just like,
I was kind of
doesn't
disappointed
she
that they
know
didn't.
the
I
books
was,
are better than the movies? Like
yeah, usually.
anyway, sorry.
But I was kind of surprised that they didn't go into that and actually show parts of the Jungle Book so she could see that this is not the same thing. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it kind
I
of made
have
me
a
wonder, like, has Mechthild Gläser, um, has she read the Jungle Book, or does she only know the Disney movie too?
that's kind of the impression that I got, and I'll get into something that I thought was a major plot inconsistency with that when we get to more spoilery sections that I was like,
Mm.
okay, like side-eyeing it just a little bit. I was
Yeah,
like, all right, suspend your disbelief, Tiffany. It doesn't have to make sense. It's a YA. It's not that deep. It's
yeah. And Dia says Momo is German also, so that might be why that one's
oh
included.
yeah, it
And
is.
she has
You're right.
Young Werther on her shelf. So
Yeah.
I had never even heard of that one. So
Momo, it's so good.
I
It's
haven't heard of
really
Momo and I
good.
haven't heard of Young Werther, either one. So
Okay. Well, Momo's written by the same author who wrote The Neverending Story, which you probably have
okay,
heard of. So
that
it's
one I've
the
heard of,
same author, but it's a lesser known work in the US, but I think it's just as well known in Germany.
probably. So,
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting that her last name was Lennox, and I was wondering if there was going to be some Secret Garden tie-ins with Mary Lennox.
oh, I didn't catch that.
And I was
I
kind of
forgot
like,
that that was her
oh,
last name.
I was like, oh, I feel like they could have done some, but I guess she still was kind of like healed by discovering the
Right.
book world, whereas Mary Lennox was healed by discovering the secret garden.
Yeah.
So maybe there are some parallels, but felt like it could have been
Yeah.
a little intentional with that. I was wondering if the last name was chosen for that reason, but I don't think it was.
It may have been.
I don't think it was.
She just Google searched like English surnames.
Maybe.
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 So, all right. Do we have any more non-spoilery thoughts, or do we want to move on to? Like, I
Nope,
don't
I
want to
think
cut off
everything else is
early. So
spoilery. I was just looking at my notes really quick. No, I think everything else is spoilery.
okay. So at this point, we will be going into spoilers. I don't know how deep. Depends on where our conversation goes. But if you don't want to be spoiled for the book, thank you for joining us. I understand you leaving. If you don't care about being spoiled or you have read it, feel free to continue watching. Okay. So the first question, I'm going to get into one of the big ones to start
Okay.
with. What did you think about Amy and Alexis's relationship?
Oh boy. I hated it.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't so much that like I felt like Amy had a poor relationship. I didn't feel like it was like Amy's fault. I felt like Alexis was a terrible mother, and I recognized the fact that she became a mother very young.
Yeah.
And then as soon as she got pregnant, she like essentially ran away from home at 17. Right. And so she had no support system. Her mother was not actively involved in her helping her raise this child when she was 17. So I recognized that, but I really thought that Alexis was incredibly selfish because they were there partly because Amy had been horrifically bullied. Like some of the stuff that they said kids did to her, I was like,
Yeah.
that's terrible. Like this girl should be in therapy. And yet like Alexis never talks to her at all. Instead, she's just hooking up with an old flame like on the down low and
Right.
not saying anything to anybody. And the reason that she's all upset because being with her ex was kind of like a rebound because she had just been dumped by a married man that she was dating.
Yeah.
That had children like Alexis's age and he went back, or Amy's age, and he went back to his wife. And
Right.
she's heartbroken. And I'm like, maybe don't date married men. Like
Right.
I'm really having a hard time feeling sorry for you right now.
Yeah. It's one of those that I'm hoping. I don't know for sure, like how maybe German stories are done different or something, or maybe it's just her way of writing. I'm really hoping that the abruptness of like he left us to go back to his wife and children was meant to be shocking to them. And it's like, yeah, it was a shock to us too. Like, I'm kind of hoping that's what that was.
I hope so too. I didn't see that like actually really communicated, but when she said that, I was kind of like, you said that on Fable, and I was kind of like, I'm just gonna accept that as canon, so I don't dislike her.
Right. Because I'm like, I realize, yes, it's in a different country, but I'm like, I can't think of a country where it's like you're not going to look down on a character or look down on a person because they were
Right.
dating someone they knew was married.
Yeah.
Like, in what culture is that okay? So
Maybe French.
maybe.
Some French books. I just think of like Henri de Balzac, where everybody is like has a mistress on the
Right.
side, and everyone's like, "Of course you do." Like,
Right?
that's the only thing I can think of.
Sad but true.
Germans have more standards. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm like, and a lot of those French books are like the 1800s, but it's like
Yeah.
in modern society, I don't feel like that's normally okay.
No.
Maybe there are places where it is, but I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that we're supposed to like Alexis if we think that she was intentionally having this relationship.
Not to mention the fact she's not there for her daughter at all. And I also thought it was interesting how often she criticized the way Amy dressed when Amy was severely bullied for her body and the way that she looked. And her mom's like, why are you wearing such shapeless clothes? Why don't you wear colors? Why don't you do that? And it's like,
that doesn't help.
We're here because your daughter was horrifically bullied.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just like criticizing her appearance. And then you're like, it's fine, you're just my little giraffe. And I was like, that's also kind of an insulting nickname.
Yeah.
So,
You're
tall, gangly, awkward, like so nice.
Yeah. Ashley asked, was there even any mention of Alexis having a job? I realize Europeans have lengthy holidays, but it still seems a long time. I don't know if we ever hear. Oh, she has to have a job. It's just the two of them. But I don't think we ever hear what her job is.
No. And she was gone for the whole summer.
Yeah.
And there was no Wi-Fi on this island.
No. Because I feel like their holidays are normally like, or vacation days is like 6 to 8 weeks a year. But that's more than the summer holidays. Summer holidays are more like 3 months. So
right, exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah, the little details like that there are moments that I'm like, I'm just gonna let this go because I don't want to. I'm not supposed to think this deeply about this part. I'll ruin it for myself.
Right. You're supposed to pretend that this is okay.
Yeah. Well, it's never really addressed again either. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, he went back to his wife, and then like we don't ever talk about it again.
Yeah. Except for when it's like she's on the rebound, then it gets brought up again, but that's the only reason.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and it sounds like, because at first Amy was upset, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get that she's upset because the guy is younger, but it's like, is it really worth getting that upset over? But then she talks about that, like, they normally tell each other everything. I'm like, yeah, if you're normally open with your child about everything, and then you hide this from them, I don't know what you expected.
And Amy's unable to talk to her mom about book jumping or anything else because she can't find her. Because all she's doing is sneaking around the island with this guy. And initially I was like, this is kind of skeezy that he's this much younger than her, because it seems like almost like a potential grooming situation.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then we find out the truth about Desmond.
Older than her.
It's like a Twilight situation.
Right.
And actually hundreds of years old.
Yeah. And I'm like, that actually makes it worse.
Yeah, because she would have grown up with him.
It's like 17 years difference is what they look like.
Yeah.
But in reality, he's 300 years older than her. It's like, that's a bigger age gap.
She would have been born on that island and grown up with him too.
Yeah.
Which also makes it weird. Which I didn't think about until right this second. And I don't want to think about it again.
This is what we get for talking through things.
I know. I'm processing right now. I'm verbally processing with you all, and I'll be okay. I just need to work through this.
Yeah. So Chrissy says, I agree. I didn't like the mother-daughter dynamic. It was so toxic. I felt like she just ditched her daughter for a man.
Yep.
Yeah,
Great.
pretty much.
And then they're like, just come along. He's actually your dad, so just join us.
Right.
It'd be great, but she feels like the third wheel every time she's with him.
Yeah.
So.
And then Alexis is planning to just leave again.
Yeah, but she doesn't tell anyone that either. Like, I know that they originally planned to come there for the summer, but she's seeing that her daughter's thriving and wants to stay. And Desmond doesn't know they're only coming for the summer. And then she just drops it at a dinner where all these other people are.
Yeah. It's like, why are
Which
you starting
also
up this
felt like a
relationship
jerk
again if you're
move.
even a couple months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Desmond.
Ashley said it sure seems like they don't tell each other anything.
It really
not
does. There's not good communication for people who apparently have a basis of telling each other everything.
Yeah.
They had no problem telling each other nothing because there was no point. Was there any point in the story where Amy told her mom that she was interested in Will, or that they liked each other, or that they were kissing, or that, like, she never told her anything? She never even told her she was, like, jumping outside of, like, the stone arch. She didn't tell her anything.
No. The only time she even admitted to leaving the books that she was in was when they were at the dinner and she got confronted by the Laird and Betsy.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, if it hadn't been for that, she wouldn't have even told her that much.
Yeah.
So.
It was a weird dynamic when they're trying to construe them being super close.
Yeah. Me think not.
Thankfully, that wasn't the main point of the book.
No.
You could ignore that for good chunks.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of the reason why it wasn't done well, is because it was a smaller part.
Right.
And so it's like, well, we're going to focus on this other part and you guys can just ignore this part, hopefully. I don't know. There were some parts in the book where it's like it would mention, like, oh yeah, a couple weeks ago this happened. And I'm like, this feels like first draft writing, where you realize, oh yeah, I need to include this, but then when you edit the book, you include 2 weeks earlier this happened.
Yeah.
So then we come back to it later.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of things in terms of the book jumping itself that felt really inconsistent. Like the fact that she was, like, able to go to the margins immediately, which that's explained when we learn that she's half a fictional character. Like, I'm like, okay. That's fine that you waited to tell me that. But even stuff where it's like some of the stuff that she's able to do, and it's like, okay, but she's supposed to come back, and he's like, her teacher Glenn is like, you need to tell me this part of the Jungle Book, and she never tells him, and he doesn't confront her until like a month later, like, hey, you're not telling me things. And it's like, oh, what a bad teacher.
Right.
Like, you're like, go in there, but then, like, everyone else is back from their book jumping and you don't come back till dinner time, but no one's like, where is she okay? Like, there was all kinds of stuff like that. And then, like, Shere Khan taking her aside and saying, hey, you can't interact with the wolves because then they won't adopt Mowgli and the story will be ruined. But every story she goes in, she interacts with all the characters and they know she's a reader, and they tell her, don't change things, don't do this, you'll change things. And I'm like, so why would the wolves have been any different? Like, why was that something that Shere Khan warned her about? Like,
yeah, I kind of wanted the same thing, and the only thing I can come up with is that where she jumped into the book was right where that was happening, and so she would be part of the plot if she walked in on them at that point. And the other book, she's outside of the plot, where she's talking with the characters because their time in the book hasn't come up yet. That's the only explanation I can come up with.
Yeah, although the metamorphosis is like right when he's at the beginning of the book, where he's waking up and the people are coming in, and or things are about to happen and they're waiting for it to happen. But yeah, like, it felt like some of that stuff felt like inconsistent, where it's like, this was the only book that she wasn't allowed. I know.
Did she address Oliver Twist at all?
I know. Oh, I like how when she decides to jump in that scene, because she's like, I haven't finished the book yet, so I don't want to, like, spoil myself.
Yeah.
Liked that.
But then you go change stuff.
Yeah, you give him chewing gum. You come back out and get food and gum, and then you go back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the one thing that annoyed me with Amy, is it's like, we're setting up these rules, but you're immediately breaking them.
Right.
And you don't see a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when some of the things, like, initially, like when she leaves the Jungle Book and she, like, decides not to follow Shere Khan, and she sees, like, you know, the crossroads, and she goes to the margins. Like, at that point, she doesn't even know she's not supposed to be doing those things.
Yeah.
And it is explained that she's able to do those things because she's a fictional character, like partly fictional. So I'm like, well, that makes sense. But like, she didn't care that she continued to break rules, and it seemed like nobody noticed until it was convenient to the plot.
Yeah.
That she was breaking rules.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, it was a cool idea, but there were things about the execution that I'm like, this could, if you had taken just a little bit more time to flesh this out, this could have been really, really cool.
All right. Ashley says she has to put a kid to bed. So.
Well, we haven't talked about the very ending yet, so I don't think we've spoiled you for anything, even though you haven't finished it yet. I think you're far enough that we haven't talked about anything that would spoil you. So it's good timing.
Right. Well, my next question probably will. So, because that's the mystery. So my question is, what did you figure out? And was there anything that you thought was not answered well?
So I knew that the ideas being stolen had to do with the burned manuscript and wanting to rebuild that like almost instantly when they started taking ideas and stuff.
When you figured it out faster than I did.
I figured that out very quickly, but I thought that it was Desmond, Glenn, and the other guy whose name I never remember because you don't even see him at all. Could have just been Desmond and Glenn.
And them.
Yeah.
I was convinced if only one of them was part of it, it was going to be Clyde because we knew nothing about him.
That's a good point. But I did think it would have been interesting. I think Chrissy said this too, where she's like, I think it's the mom or the dad. Because like that would have been an interesting twist if it had been Desmond, especially when he was very secretive with like what was going on. And so when she finds the ideas in Will's cabin or cottage or whatever, I thought that was a red herring. I was like, absolutely not. That's not him. I did figure out pretty quickly as well that the little girl had to do with the manuscript. I didn't know she was the princess at first, but as soon as they discovered her cave, I knew that she was the princess from the book. I just assumed that the princess was like older, that it was like a romantic thing.
Yeah.
Because that's often what you see in fairy tales. So I think that was an intentional subversion. But I also thought that there was more than one thief, because there were times where they, like the instant that they stopped the theft from happening in the metamorphosis, then like a second later they find out that an idea has been stolen from another book.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like the thefts were happening nearly simultaneously, which would be impossible unless you have more than one thief. And I didn't think that was ever explained. So I was kind of like, how was he able to jump so quickly to another book, like so far away, and already had another plan? Though I did think it was funny that they stole the evil from Wuthering Heights, and then it basically had no plot. Like, I laughed at that. I thought some of the stuff was so good. Like, I love the Pride and Prejudice thing, and like Lizzie breaks her leg, and then Mrs. Bennet is like, my poor nerves, why did you have to go break your leg? And I was like, I love that she said my poor nerves. Like, there were so many like bookish references and things that were happening that I thought were like so good. But then there were things where they were talking about like, oh well, the last thing she needs is a monster. I'm like, she has the evil from Wuthering Heights and also Mr. Hyde. Why does she need a monster from the Odyssey? Like,
well, she needed Mr. Hyde for the metamorphosis.
Oh, okay.
Because she didn't get it from the metamorphosis, so she had to get it from Mr. Hyde.
Okay.
That was the reason for him.
Okay. I was like, that's a monster, though. Like, Mr. Hyde's kind of a monster. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Because I did not get that on my own. I was like, I don't understand. Okay. So that was great. But the one thing that I felt like wasn't explained is like that these thefts are happening almost simultaneously. Which I think is makes us think that like Lady Mayread, I don't know if that's how you say her name or not.
I don't know. It'll speak Scottish Gaelic.
Yeah, me either, and I didn't listen to it on audio. I don't know if they were trying to do a red herring that it was her and Betsy, because I immediately did not think that Betsy had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And that was too early on. I was like, this is a red herring. So I don't know if it was trying to make us think that it was those two, but as a result, I thought it was Glenn and Desmond.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, no, it was just one person the whole time.
Yeah.
So
She just
that's the only
poisoned
thing that I
someone
felt
else.
like really wasn't explained at all.
I think for the most part, I liked the mystery. If
Mhm.
nothing else, it kept me on the edge of my seat throughout the entire book.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what was going on.
Yes.
Uh,
And is there anything creepier than a little kid being evil? Really? That it's this poor little, like,
a
starving looking
300-year-old
girl.
child.
Yeah. Like, that was not what you would have expected.
Yeah. And she's like, this is my story. You have to do what I say. And I'm like, is that why the original fairy tale ended up the way it did? Because she said it's going to be this way?
Oh.
Like, did she change her own story?
She may have.
I don't know.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
But that would make sense.
I could see her doing it.
I was thinking it was because the book itself got burned somehow and it was like the last copy or something. But it would make perfect sense.
Yeah, that's why the other characters can't go back to it, because there's not enough of the story left for them to live in.
Yeah. That is really interesting though, because I could definitely see her doing that.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if she was just made to be that manipulative of a character and it was still part of her story, or if she became manipulative and changed her story. We don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's not a story that really exists. We can't compare.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the last copy is gone.
Yeah. I loved like the epigraphs. Well, are they epigraphs if they're at the end of the chapter? I don't know. But like that was part of the actual fairy tale at the end of each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I loved those, and I thought that they were really like the phrasing, like the prose was really nice in those too.
I wanted more.
Me too. I would just read that whole fairy tale. Honestly, I wish she had written a separate like novella with the original fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been cool.
Like there, now it has a copy again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they're like, well, now this whole book doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very much convinced that at least one of the characters from the original book, other than the princess, had to be behind it. And the fact that none of them were.
I know.
Like, it's almost kind of disappointing.
I was really surprised. And then there was one point where she thought it was Brock, like the mentally disabled boy. And I was like, how is he supposed to jump in and out of books?
Yeah.
He's not related to them. Like, he wouldn't be able to do that. But then there was a moment that I kind of was like, I think it was there because of it furthered the plot, I guess. But like, there's a moment where she realizes, like, there's been something bothering me all day. And she's like, wait, the shadow wasn't the size of a child. It was the size of a man. And then she never tells Will that.
Yeah.
She never mentions it to him, even though they're trying to solve this together. Right. And I was like, why didn't she mention that to him? I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference to him. No. Because he had no idea that she was like controlling him.
Yeah.
Which was also a very creepy aspect.
Very. Yeah. I don't think we're actually told how old Alexis's brother is. We know Finley's her brother. But I don't think we're told how old he is.
I forgot about that because that's how little of a role that played.
Yeah. We see him once, and then he's mentioned one or two other times, and that's about it. Yeah. But I was starting to wonder if it might have been him.
Right.
Because we don't know their age difference. So I'm like, is he still young enough that he can jump into books?
Yeah.
But if he was, then it's like, then why is he not in the class?
I was kind of wondering why the age was the way that it was for them to jump. Like, I'm like,
I want to know why 5 years old.
Yeah, well, and why did you put a 5-year-old in Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah.
Like, that is like, they're like, we're going to put you in a safe fairy tale, Amy. We're going to put you in a little kid's book. And they're like, Sherlock Holmes, murder, go. I was like, okay, like.
Well, and I think technically the only reason that Amy is put into safe books is because her mom said so.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that's normally what they do.
Yeah, you're right. She did make that stipulation. And I felt like the Jungle Book was the least safe book they could have chosen because of all the wild animals. But
right. But yeah, it's like, I wonder, you're worried about these books getting messed up. Why are you sending 5-year-olds into the book who are just likely to mess them up.
That's a really good point, honestly.
Because like I look at my kids and they're older than 5, and I'm just like, the books will not survive.
I was also wondering, I'm like, there's a lot of 5-year-olds that can't read yet.
Yeah.
You usually learn to read in kindergarten, and you might start kindergarten when you're already like almost 6.
Yeah. So
And
you don't know the
how to
stories,
read
you
yet.
don't know what to not mess with.
And how do you get in the book if you can't read the words? Don't you just start reading the words and then they swirl and then you get sucked in?
I don't know if she reads them or not.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Chrissy
But yeah, I
said,
was interested as to why it was cut off at that,
Yeah.
like 25, I think. I was like, why 25? Just curious.
yeah, to me it's like 15 to 35 would make more sense than 5 to 25.
Yeah. You'd at least have a fully formed frontal lobe for some of that time.
Yeah. So Chrissy says, I hadn't figured it out, but I did think her mom had something to do with the mystery. It was intense enough to keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
And the evil kid shocked me. I was okay. We are getting grim. Very much so.
Yeah, it really got quite dark at the end.
Which actually doesn't surprise me because it's German.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, it's a fairy tale.
Fairy tales, like
Yeah, fairy tales.
Dark stories.
Yeah, the original fairy tales were very dark. I was gonna say grim, and then I was like, Grimm's fairy tales. So
yeah,
they're literally grim, but also written by the
German. Came up with that word.
Probably.
Would not
Actually,
surprise
I
me.
never thought about that, but
I
probably.
didn't either till just now.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, between that and like the Metamorphosis and a lot of Faustus, all that stuff. Like, they have some dark stories.
Yeah, and Hoffman, right?
I think Faustus is Goethe.
No, I mean Hoffman as well is pretty.
E.T. Hoffman.
I think his short stories are not the Nutcracker.
Not the Nutcracker.
But a lot of his other like short stories are quite dark as well. So
I haven't read any of him, so that one I don't know.
I've read a little bit, and he's quite dark, but in a fun way.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. We'll go on from this one to a little bit more fun question. We're going to talk about book jumping. But instead of just talking about book jumping in the book, I have a question for you. If you could book jump, would you? And if you did, where would you go?
Oh, I for sure would book jump. There'd probably be a lot of books that I would jump into, but like my stereotypical answer is that I would jump into Fellowship of the Ring, but at the beginning when they're still in the Shire, because I would love to live in the Shire, and I feel like that's like such an obvious bookish answer, but that is like my number one, like for sure, where I would jump. But there's like a lot of other books that I would love to like go and interact with the characters. I would love to jump into a Jane Austen book. Mm-hmm. There's so many. I don't even know. It would be fun.
And see, I'm apparently one of the weird ones because everyone's like, if I lived in Middle Earth, I would live in the Shire and I would be a hobbit. And I've always been the one that I'm like, I would live in Lothlorien.
Lothlorien is.
I want to live in the woods with the elves.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
I would not cry being there. That's for sure. That would be like my second favorite place in Middle Earth is Lothlorien, more than Rivendell. Yeah.
I would take Rivendell as a second if I couldn't do Lothlorien, but Lothlorien's my first.
I love it.
Yeah.
Any other books you jump into?
Probably a lot of fantasy, just because a lot of your historical fiction and classics and stuff, you can kind of picture them, or there's still pictures and paintings of those places. There isn't for fantasy, and I want to see what some of these places look like for real.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, can you imagine jumping into like Stormlight Archive and seeing what a chol actually looks like, and like some of the creatures and stuff? That would be super cool. I feel like a lot of historical fiction also takes place during difficult times that you would not want to visit. No. I don't want to be in World War II. No, thank you. I'm glad I was born now.
Yeah. Well, I'm not jumping into a dystopian either.
Exactly. Yeah. There are certain things I'm like, probably not. And there's a lot of classics that have a lot of like difficult things. Like I would not jump into Crime and Punishment, even though it's one of my favorite books of all time. No, thank you. I like Raskolnikov on the page. I don't want to be there.
That's why Jane Austen is safe.
Yes. Yeah. Jane Austen would be a good one for sure.
Little Women is safe. I would be
Oh,
okay with
Little
that
Women
one.
would be good. I mean, parts of that are sad. And her talking about Momo, like I would jump into Momo. Momo is a fun one.
Apparently, I need
So
to pick that book up.
I think you would enjoy it. There's a lot of middle grade books that I think would be really fun to jump into.
Yeah.
Would be enjoyable and safer than
Yeah,
adult books.
right. Explore Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but without having to, be punished for trying stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want to be one of the kids.
No.
Willy Wonka.
No.
Narnia would be a great one,
Ooh, yes.
obviously. You know, there's so many good like children's fantasies that would be really great.
Mhm. Okay. So, getting off of just the main plotline stuff, what were some of your favorite parts in the book?
I mentioned some of them already. Like I
Okay.
love the Pride and Prejudice scene.
Mm.
I thought that was great. And this might be one of your questions, so I don't want to skip ahead too far, but I really did like the ending and the way that it resolved and the way that it was bittersweet, which made more sense with a fairy tale than everything just being perfect.
Yeah.
I actually really liked the way it ended. It wasn't like a neat little bow, and I liked that a lot.
I know I don't have a question on that. I probably should. But this is
Okay.
what happens when I'm scrambling to put questions together.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, I was kind of nervous about the resurrection trope because I could kind of see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it ultimately worked out, I'm like, I appreciate this one because there's still a dilemma.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a full resurrection because now he's a literary character.
Yeah.
And once she turns 25, she won't ever get to see him again.
Yeah.
And if she wants to live her life at all, she won't get to see him frequently.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that now he is 17 forever because he won't age because he's a literary character. And I'm like, this is kind of like her mom and Desmond.
Right.
Is she going to get pregnant?
Right.
And that baby will then be 3/4 literary.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Although if she becomes a literary character, then the baby would be full literary. So.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then if
No,
they're both literary, are they able to have kids? Because that would be outside.
they
the plot.
wouldn't be within their story, I wouldn't guess, because he's not even truly fully a part of Peter Pan, I guess. So I don't even know how that works with him being in Peter Pan as a book character, but he's not part of the plot. I guess the plot would have just changed, right?
Yeah. Which I'm not going to lie, it makes me curious to reread Peter Pan and see if there is a character named Will in there. And that's why she gave him his name.
Would be interesting. I don't remember there being a Will, but I haven't read it since like probably 6-7 years. Like it's been a long, and that's the only time I read it. That's interesting. That would be cool if there was a Will. But
Right.
I really liked the end too, with kind of like this alluding of like maybe this isn't over.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna find a new prince,
so you don't get to
or a new
find out.
knight. I mean, like that little last epigraph. I was like, ooh, I
Yeah.
liked that ending too.
Yeah. Because there's still a snippet of the manuscript left, so you never know.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. And of course, with it being a standalone, you don't get to find out.
Yeah, but I like that a little bit.
I do
That
too.
like I can imagine how this might go without an author feeling like, well, I have to turn it into a trilogy, even though maybe I don't have enough material for that.
Yeah.
Like just like I like that it's a standalone.
Yeah.
So.
And I like stories that end at least a little ambiguously because I'm like, then we can kind of come up with our own ending and how we think things end.
Yeah, it ended
Instead of
definitively enough in some ways, but then it had that a little bit of openness. I really liked it.
Yeah, because some books have an epilogue, and I'm like, it didn't need the epilogue. It could have stayed open-ended and been fine.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes they try too hard to close the ending of it.
Yeah, we got to wrap up everything.
No.
So Chrissy said she would want to jump into Hob.
Ooh.
One day with Fitz in Buckkeep would be amazing. I had such a great time reading Book Jumper. Great discussion. I'm heading out for the evening. Well, I hope you have a good night, Chrissy.
Hi, thanks for joining us. I don't know if I'd want to go to Buckkeep. There's too many people there I don't like.
Right.
I'm reading Hob right now, but I'm reading Ship of Magic, so it's it's in a different location. So.
I've only read Assassin's Apprentice and Royal Assassin, so all I know is Buckkeep.
Yeah. But there's so many people there that I do like Fitz though.
Yeah.
And my brain is blanking on the guy that essentially raises him. It's been
Yeah.
a year and a half since I read it, so
It's been 2 or 3 years since I read Royal Assassin, so I got nothing.
yeah. It's good though. I loved that trilogy so much.
Yeah.
That's why it was actually hard. I think I said this last night to Dia also, that I was like, I don't want to be critical of this, but I'm reading Hobb at the same time, who has a really, really fleshed out world. It's super detailed. And I'm like, I have a lot of questions here.
Right.
And I was like, these are not, but they're not the same. And I should not have the same expectations.
Yeah. Especially when Hobb is adult and this is YA for starters.
Yes. Yeah, that too. That too. Like, I knew there was going to be a romance from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Amy and Will, for sure.
Yep. But at the same time, I like that Amy found someone who actually appreciated her.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like it was a super angsty romance, like most of it. Like, and I'm someone who is very picky with my romance, so there's a lot of YA that I don't read. And I didn't feel like most of this was cringy. There's only a couple little parts that I was like, it was just a line, and I'm like, this is fine, I'm good. Yeah. Except the one part where it talks about her looking into his eyes while she kisses him, and I'm like, who kisses with their eyes open?
Right? I wondered the same thing.
It pulled me right out. I was like, my note on my Kindle says bunch of psychos. like why would you kiss with your eyes open? Right. I'm glad I'm not alone that you noticed that. Makes you feel better.
Part of me was like, did I read that right?
I read it again and I was like, no, maybe it's the translator's fault. And she's saying she looked into his eyes before she kissed him, and the translator just messed it up.
I don't know. I think the one thing that I almost was like, this was a little too quick, was when she was first suspicious of Will of being the thief. And then he's like, no, it wasn't me. And like, she very quickly forgives him or quickly believes him, I guess I should say. And part of me was like, wow, you made your decisions really quick. But I know she said like she didn't see any lying in his eyes, but I think the poor girl just wants someone to care. And so if nothing else, I think she wanted to believe that he wasn't lying.
Yeah. Because I think young love can be like that too. That you're not as jaded, and you want to believe someone. You want them to be telling you.
Especially after you've been hurt by other people like she had.
Your own mom's not telling you the truth all of a sudden.
Yeah. Gosh. Like, I just need somebody.
Yeah, poor girl. At least Will was really nice to her.
Yeah. At least Will was genuine.
Yes. Oh, I have one other thing to say that I guess is quite spoilery and has to do with the ending. So a couple of the plot points that were spoiled, I mentioned on Fable that both of the major ones that were spoiled both dealt with a suicide at the end of the book.
Oh.
And you were like, I hope this isn't foreshadowing anything, but it did. It did. And I was like, I think it might be, but why? And then his suicide was more heroic.
Yeah.
The other ones were because of depression and unrequited love or dysfunctional relationships.
Right.
So it wasn't as bad. It was heroic, but I was like, that's interesting. It was just an interesting tie-in that I'm like, this was probably intentional, but
probably.
Anyway.
And I completely forgot about that by the time I read it. So.
I had it in my notes. Like, I was like, oh, yep. It was on my Kindle. I'm like, yep, he killed himself. Okay. It was connected.
Yep. At least it was him and not her. Because the other books, it's the main character. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Or at least the titular character. We'll put it that way. I debate how much Anna Karenina is actually the main character of her story.
She was a main character.
She was a main character, but
yeah, we follow several different people's paths, Yeah.
So. It's like there's like 3 main characters in the story.
Yeah.
And then the people around them. So
I was glad that I had read that book at least.
Yeah.
But Young Werther, hadn't read that.
Yeah.
Now I know.
Well,
I know that he dies and why.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Like I saw a copy of Anna Karenina at the store. My brother showed it to me because it's like a really pretty copy. And he's like, oh, here, look at this. and literally the cover is the front of a train. I was
What?
like, oh, that is rude.
That
And
is
he's
rude.
like, what? I'm like, I can't tell you.
It is
But I
rude.
don't appreciate that.
Gosh. That's awful. Who was in charge of this design
I
choice?
don't know. But yeah,
Need a new marketing person.
like it was a really pretty cover. I agree, but I'm like, no.
It's terrible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So, based on this book alone, would you read another book by this author?
I think I would actually, even though I have definitely had some criticism that I said tonight. It was a fun ride, and I would be even more interested to read something that she published after this to see if she kind of like honed, kind of like adding more details in or things that, like you said, that felt almost like a first draft where someone all of a sudden like this happened 2 weeks ago, and it's like that's something that should have been put earlier in the book
That's a
and
nice
stuff.
note to yourself.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I
So
put it in the book.
So yeah, I'm wondering if with future books, because there were moments that were really lovely the way that they were written, and you can feel her love and appreciation for books, especially classic literature, in this book. And so I'm like, if she like maybe I would try like a book that she wrote after this to just kind of see if she kind of honed some of the things that I kind of felt like could be improved by writing longer. But I don't know if she wrote a bunch before this or if this was a debut book. I didn't do any research on that at all.
No. She only has 2 books that have been published into English or translated
Okay.
into English. And this is the first of the 2.
Okay.
As far as publication order. I don't know if it's the first. I would assume it's the first published in German of the 2.
Okay.
But I don't remember for sure.
Okay.
But I know it was the first published or translated into English.
Yeah.
But yeah, based on this book, I was definitely intrigued enough. Like I could read another book by her, even as more of just like a creepy fluff book. I don't know
Right.
the other
Yeah.
way to call it. Because it's like it's not complete fluff because it is a creepy undertone to it.
Right.
But just as a lighter book that I don't have to take too seriously.
Yeah. And I felt like it didn't rely on like all these like stereotypical YA tropes that are like eye roll worthy. It didn't have like so many pages of angst that I'm just like, okay. Like I felt like there was very little about it being YA that actually bothered me.
Yeah.
Which is not the case for me with a lot of books that are published in America. So I'm kind of wondering if those similar tropes maybe aren't as prevalent in Europe or Germany in particular. So
because I don't really notice it in the Mere Visitor series either, and that was originally in French.
okay, yeah.
But that one's it's a very different fantasy from anything else I've read. So I'm like, I don't even know who to recommend this to.
What was it called again?
The Mere Visitor.
The Mere Visitor. Okay. I've never heard of that one, I don't think.
It's behind me, but I can't reach it.
No. Use your cat to do it for you.
That's too far back. I was going to try, but
that's okay.
It's just too far away.
I wrote it down.
Promise is the first book.
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah, I've seen that cover. I love that cover. I thought it was middle grade for some reason. I guess the cover just gives me middle grade vibes.
It does a little bit, but it is YA, and I think people were originally comparing it to like, if you like Harry Potter, you'll like this, and I'm like, this is nothing like Harry Potter. Like, there's no school, there's no nothing like that.
How is it like Harry Potter then? Because that's the main thing when people say like Harry Potter, they mean a magical school setting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Weird.
It's set in, I'm assuming it's supposed to be a fictional world, and the world is broken apart, so all these people live on these giant arcs, and the main character lives on one arc. She gets betrothed to a guy on another arc, and so she goes over there, and there's tons of political intrigue and stuff, but I'm like, it's not Harry Potter-esque at all. So
that sounds super interesting, and knowing that it's not like as super YA as a lot of the stuff that's being published these days makes me more apt to pick it up, because it's not that I like think that there's anything wrong with YA. It's that if you've heard me talk about this, I was a very angsty teenager, and I don't want to relive that in my
Right.
30s.
I
So
get that.
I don't have a problem with YA in general. I hope that that didn't sound snobby if anyone's watching this and they love YA. I don't think
Right.
there's anything wrong with YA as a genre. I just can't handle high level of angst because I am reminded of myself and I cringe, and I just don't want to do that to myself. I want to live a happy life.
Yeah. The hardest part in that series is the guy that she's betrothed to is like very distant, very cold, which fits because it's a very wintry arc that he lives on.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those where it's just like, is there any kind of shell that we can break through or even crack? So it's definitely a romance that plays out very, very differently. And it's taken until the third book for me to go, yeah, I think I'm really starting to get on board with this guy. Like, it was kind of iffy in the first and second book, but it's gradually gotten to where I'm like, I think I kind of like this guy, but we got to get a crack in this shell.
I mean, that makes sense because someone who has this cold exterior, you don't actually know what they're thinking and whether or not they care. So it's hard to know where you stand with them. So
Yeah. And it's still only a crack in the third book. Like, he's not suddenly, you know, like this super lovable guy and stuff, but it's like, but you see hints of like, okay, maybe he really does care. He's just not the best at showing it, or he shows it in his own way. So,
how many books are there?
4.
Okay.
So yeah, most of the way through the series, but the second book has some too. But by the third book, I'm like, okay, I'm actually starting to see more of it.
I prefer a slow burn to a swoony. I saw him once, and I would die for him because he's so hot. You know?
Yeah. And so many
slow
of those
burn
are
feels
also
more
based on
realistic.
like, so many of those are based on like, you know, his eyes, his hair, this and that, and I'm like, are you attracted to him for anything other than his looks? Because that's not gonna make a relationship last.
Yeah, and then they're like, I would die for him. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. Your self-preservation instincts would kick in because you'd be like, I don't even know him. Why am I dying for him?
Right.
I'm not. Bye. Good luck with your life or not.
So I actually have read another book by Mechthild Gläser, which is The Forgotten Book. If you like Jane Austen, you'll probably really like that one.
Okay.
Because it's a play on Pride and Prejudice and Emma.
Fun.
Set at a school with a Gothic twist.
Ooh, you just gave me so many buzzwords.
Yeah. It's like a German boarding school, and there's a Gothic element to it.
I love Gothic. I love schools. I love Jane Austen, and I could feel her love for Jane Austen in this with the Pride and Prejudice moments, and that she chose for Pride and Prejudice to be one of Amy's favorite books.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm like, the Pride and Prejudice elements at times I was like, if you go in knowing that that's what it's based on, you might feel like it's a little heavy-handed, but for me who didn't realize that's what it was based on, I loved all the things that came up that were connected to it. So
that's fun. I love it.
Yeah.
So then I would
based on The Forgotten Book, I would absolutely read another book by her.
Yeah.
So
you saying that makes me go, yeah, okay, I'll read that book by her.
Right. And unfortunately, it's the only other one translated into English at this point. So,
but at least it's the one I want to read.
I kind of want to delve more into German so I can actually read her other books, but
that would be
hope that someone translates them into English, one or the other.
Yeah. Whichever's faster.
Yeah. So. All right. Do you have any additional comments before we get to final thoughts?
I do not. I think I got.
So we've talked about a lot. So.
Yeah.
I just always want to give a chance before.
Thank you.
So, all right. So final thoughts and star ratings. I know you gave your star rating earlier, but
I did. And I think I said kind of how I felt at the beginning too, that it was a fun ride, but it wasn't all that deep. And I definitely had some critiques in some of the way that plot points were revealed and stuff. But I loved the love of books that you could feel in this. And I loved the mystery elements and how it got kind of dark at the end. I just, and I liked the bittersweet ending. So probably 3.5 stars. Like, in that range. Didn't quite make a 4-star. 4-star means I would definitely reread it. I don't know if I'd reread this, but it was fun.
Yeah, I definitely love the mystery element as well. I love the kind of darker undertone that it had. I don't know.
Mm-mm.
For me, that just makes a story fun when there's a darker element. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the German in me. I don't know. Let's blame it on that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there were definitely, especially towards the beginning of the book, was the worst part where it was just like, I feel like you gave us some information, but you didn't delve in deep enough for
Mhm.
what I would have wanted.
Right.
So I would probably be 3.5 to 4 star. So, because I did really like the ending. I love the way it wrapped up.
I did too. I think that she saved a lot of it with that ending.
Mhm.
And a lot of things that I felt like, why are we doing this? This isn't explained enough. A lot of those questions that I had were answered
Yeah.
gradually. So
Yeah. It just took a while.
it did. It did.
So then our book for next month is Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I have never read a book by him, and this was one of the shorter ones. So
I've heard great things about that book. I've not read it either, but I've heard
I
it's really good.
I was wanting to get to Theft of Swords, but I was trying to keep the books in the book club under 500 pages, so that one was out.
Mhm.
But I have heard good things about this one, and I will be co-hosting this with Dia next month, so that will be fun. And it's a reread for her, so we'll be very curious to hear her thoughts upon reread
Yeah.
versus my first time read. But it is an adult epic fantasy, and that's about all I know about it. So I guess I can read the back. Since time immemorial, humans have worshipped the gods they call Frey, truly a race apart, invincible in battle, masters of magic, and seemingly immortal. But when a god falls to a human blade, the balance of power between humans and those they thought were gods changes forever. Now only a few stand between humankind and annihilation. Wraith, reluctant to embrace his destiny as the god killer, Suri, a young seer burdened by signs of impending doom, and Persephone, who must overcome personal tragedy to lead her people. The age of myth is over. The time of rebellion has begun.
Ooh,
There you
that sounds really good.
Yeah.
I love me a fake religious system in a
Right?
fantasy book. Let me just tell you.
Yeah. I love to see what they come up with.
Yes, me too.
Right. Well, thank you, Tiffany, for joining me and reading this book with me.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun. This isn't a book I had ever heard of, so
Yeah. I'd only heard of it because I don't know. I think I came across the Forgotten Book either in Hoopla or my library. I don't remember which. And so obviously found that one because it was the same author.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed reading a new author.
Yeah. I think of the books we've read so far this year, this one was probably my favorite.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
there is that. And thank you all for joining us who were able to be here. I think most of them have bowed out at this point, which I understand. It's getting kind of late for some people. But thank you for being here. Thanks for reading it with us, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.